The title of God means something otherworldly, something that is beyond a mortal's grasp, something that most people would give up anything to be. Kratos had that power and still wasn't satisfied, choosing emotions over reason and thinking, starting a war that will forever change the world. The story starts off with Kratos and the Spartans taking another city down. Athena warns Kratos that the gods are not happy and he needs to stop. Kratos, as always, doesn't listen and continues. Athena starts to intervene by taking some of Kratos' powers away. Then Kratos hears Zeus's voice. Kratos tells Zeus to fuck off because he doesn't need his help. Zeus says he will and tells him to get this sword that he made for him. Kratos gets the sword and puts his powers into it. This is when Zeus betrays him and kills him. As Kratos is dying, Gaia tells him that he can't die and she can help him. She tells him that the only way for him to defeat Zeus, he needs to go talk to the Sisters of Fate. Kratos climbs his way out of Hades and starts making his way there. On his way there, he has to sacrifice a lesser god in order to get some of his powers back. When Kratos gets to the island that the Sister Fates are on, he asks Gaia why is she helping him. She tells Kratos that the reason why Zeus is like this, that when he was a baby, he was supposed to be eaten by the Titan Kronos. The mother saved him by replacing him with a rock. A bird dropped him off at Gaia's. She raised him, and instead of loving Titans, he despised them. After getting on the island where the Sister of Fate stay, Kratos goes through a bunch of shit. He accidentally kills one of his most loyal soldiers. As the loyal soldier dies, he tells Kratos that Zeus destroyed everything in Sparta, that he was trying to get an audience with the Sisters of Fate. He dies and Kratos gets mad and finally gets his audience with the Sisters of Fate. They tell him that he can't define fate. He says fuck that and defeats them. He goes back to the moment where Zeus betrays him. They fight, and as Kratos is about to win, Athena sacrifices herself for Zeus. Kratos asks her why, and she tells him that if he kills Zeus, Olympus will fall because Zeus is Olympus. She also tells him that Kratos is a part of a cycle that needs to be broken. That cycle being son killing a father. This is when Kratos finds out that he's Zeus's son. Athena warns Kratos that every god will be on Zeus's side. Kratos tells her that they will fall with Zeus. Kratos, now having the ability to control time, goes back in time to save Gaia. He brings her back to the present where they free all the other Titans. They climb up Mount Olympus while declaring war on Zeus and Olympus. This game to me is the perfect sequel. It took everything and elevated it times 10. The lore of this world and how it works, the characters and their motivations, even the side characters are awesome in this one. The main thing is that Kratos had an out and didn't take it. He could have joined the gods and everything would have been okay. Instead, he decided to choose vengeance, and that is not always the answer. Anger as well isn't always the answer, and this game shows that. It also shows how Kratos can easily be manipulated, that if he just would have taken 1 second to think things through, most of this stuff wouldn't have happened, or at least it wouldn't have went this way. So visually, this game is way better than the first one, which is kind of crazy considering that they both came out on the PS2. The biggest upgrade are the character models. Kratos looks a lot better and a lot less blocky. Same thing goes for the enemies and backgrounds. They also got a bump in quality. The same thing can't be said about the gameplay and the enemies, unfortunately. We'll talk about them anyway because there are some new enemies and abilities and weapons this time around. Starting off with the weapons. The Blades of Chaos are now called the Blades of Athena. Unfortunately, they are the exact in every same way, which is truly sad because this is the time they could have done something different. The first weapon you get is Typhon's Bane. It's a bow and it shoots wind arrows and nothing else. The second weapon you get is the Barbarian's Hammer, and it's just like the Blade of Artemis from the first game. It's useless. It swings way too slow to be effective on harder difficulties. The damage trade-off may be good for some people, but it wasn't for me. The next weapon you get is called the Spear of Destiny, and this thing really sucks. It's cool in concept, but in actual encounters is useless as well. It stretches, and that's pretty much it, and on hard it hits like a wet noodle, so avoid this weapon. That's all for weapons. Now onto the abilities. The first ability you get is Chronos Rage, and it summons this ball of lightning. This ball of lightning starts to shoot out arcs of lightning everywhere and targets anything that is somewhat close. The second weapon you get is the head of Ariel. I don't know how you pronounce it, but that's what I'm going to call it. Not Ariel from the Little Mermaid, but Ariel. I don't know. Bottom line, this thing, and it works the same way as the head of Medusa in the first game. The last weapon you get is Atlas Quake, and this one is pretty cool mainly because it's an AoE. Kratos starts punching the ground and summoning these boulders out of nowhere, and it hits everything. It's a really good way to take on multiple enemies real quick. It comes at a price though. It uses a lot of magic, but it's definitely worth the trade. Now onto the enemies. And I've said this quite a few times and it still applies here. These enemies are the same enemies across these games, but there are a couple of new ones. The first one is the Wraith of Athens, and fuck these things, point blank period. These things' strategy is just to burrow underground and pop up at the worst of times. I can't even begin to describe how annoying these things are. What makes them even more irritating is that they have iframes, aka invincibility frames. So when they pop out of the ground, they'll just hit you. It doesn't matter if you're already swinging your blades, doing a magic ability, their iframes will kick in at some point. Trust me when I say you'll want to throw your controller fighting these things. The next one is the High Priest of the Fates. These things are not as bad as the Wraiths. These things teleport across the map and steal your magic while summoning minotaurs. Luckily, you don't have to fight these things too often, but when you do, they're a pain in the ass. The last one that I know of are the Griffins. And these things only pop up a few times, but when they do, it's really cool nonetheless. You mainly see these things in these cool action set pieces when Kratos is riding on the back of a Pegasus trying to get to the island. You can jump from the Pegasus to the Griffin in order to kill one. Sometimes they have riders attached to them, so you got to take them both out. It's pretty awesome. All in all, this God of War game is by far one of the best sequels I played, honestly. I will put this up there with like Uncharted 2 levels of good. The twist where you find out that Kratos is Zeus's son is fantastic, even though I already knew from people telling me in the past. Still finding out just through playing this game was still great. Even though the combat hasn't changed much, I still think that they added just enough to keep it somewhat interesting. The biggest thing of all though is that it makes God of War 2018 that much sweeter knowing everything that you end up learning in this game.